Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
All right, welcome to Game Over Vancouver. I am Kaya May, and I am here with Jay and Ness from the Over the Glass podcast. The Vancouver Canucks just beat the San Jose Sharks 3-2 in a exciting game near the end of regulation. We could say that. Basically, like 90% of the game happened in the last 90 seconds. So, but before we break it down and everything, I just wanted to let you guys know that you should check out the flagship show of the Game Over Network on the Game Over Network channel, Hyperdrive Hockey, all things hockey across various leagues in multiple countries. Whatever it is and wherever it is, Max, Daphne, and Kev have you covered for all your hockey news with a steady dose of fun and fan engagement. You can find Hyperdrive Hockey on the Game Over Network YouTube channel or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on the Hyperdrive Hockey page at thegameovernetwork.com. All right. So the Vancouver Canucks 3-2 over the San Jose Sharks. Just overall, from both of you, how do you think, in a Sharks opinion, how did the Sharks play?
You want to go first, Ness?
Me? What? Sorry, you cut off for a sec. What was the question? How did the Sharks what?
Basically, overall, how did the Sharks fare throughout the 60 minutes?
Okay, so I told you before we started recording, this is the first game I've been able to catch since opening night. And I have seen improvements since then. Especially, I didn't get to watch the losing streak that we were on. Upset that the Canucks they broke our winning streak. Rude. But I have seen a lot of improvement, specifically on defense, because as we were again talking before we recorded, today marks a year to the day that the Canucks beat the Sharks 10-1 or something.
Yep.
One of the back-to-back games that we had last year that was not pretty. So, losing 3-2, not bad. I'll take it. Very impressed with Jake Wallman. He has been, I think, pretty solid on defense from what I've seen. I have him on my fantasy team, loving the points he's been putting up, but very scared when he went out for like 3 seconds because he got hit by Besser. I was worried because I was like, what happens to our defense if he's out? Because he is the defense.
Besser also doesn't throw a lot of hits. From what I've seen, like he's not like a super physical player. So when that happened, I was like, are they sure they got the right guy there? But yeah, I saw Jake Wallman. I keep seeing this one image where it's Wallman's points for like the first few games of the season versus like Sider's points on the Red Wings. And it's just like, wow, the Yzer plan's really working out there. We're gonna talk about rebuilds later. But Jay, what did you think of the game overall?
I was entertained. I was happy that the Sharks could figure themselves out for the most part at this point of the season to make it an entertaining game because as we mentioned earlier, they were trying to like figure out how to play hockey before the previous 3-game winning streak, and it was starting to look like, oh no, we're doing exactly what we did last season, even though we made all these great moves during the off season and Celebrini and Will Smith and all this stuff. So to piggyback off of what Ness was talking about with defense, just the cleaning up in front of the net, it just like in past seasons with Blackwood, it's just been like we've let that guy keep us in the game with like seeing 50 shots a night and then still losing. It's like these goalies have to really have like a strong mindset. And I felt like everyone was kind of on their assignment throughout the game. And then there was this bit of like tug of war with now I've got momentum and now the Canucks have momentum, and even down to like the last couple of minutes, like I'm sure there's moments in the games where obviously they can like improve and continue to improve, but as a whole, I was really happy, especially as against a team that, while you guys are struggling right now, like it is nice to see the Sharks keep up with a team that, while you're struggling, you still have a lot of like good like stars on your team that otherwise we might get run over by. So overall, I was entertained. I wish we could have at least pushed it into overtime or at least hung on at the end there, but overall, I'm happy with where they are at this moment versus where we were just a couple of games back.
Yeah, I definitely say it's been kind of like, I don't want to say a tale of two seasons because the season is like a month in, not even. But the Sharks having that not great run at the beginning of the season and then getting that three game win streak that unfortunately for you guys, the Canucks disrupted. I was gonna say unfortunately overall, and then I was like, yeah, technically, no. I mean, the Canucks would have carried on a three-game losing streak had the Sharks won tonight. So there's that. Um, I will give pointers. There was a lot good defense. That's not grammatically correct, but I'm trying to say defensively, the Sharks were very solid. Like the Canucks, they haven't shown it recently. When I say recently, I mean this past week, and when I mean this past week, I mean Wednesday night against the Devils. They can break out offensively really well, and the Sharks were actually very good at shutting them down, which, you know what? Maybe Cody Ceci getting added there, maybe that helped considering he was Mr. Game 7 against the Canucks in the playoffs last year for Edmonton. So, um it it's really nice. I think Pacific Division hockey is more fun when the Sharks are doing better. So I'm like hoping to see it get back to that form. Like I obviously remember the years prior to all of this happening, and it's yeah. Um, but for the Canucks, it just they were being shut down defensively until that little bit near the end, where my brain just stopped loading there for a second. I didn't freeze. I apologize. Um, that just the third period was kind of when they started to gain their bearing. Jake DeBrusk got his first goal for the Canucks of the season, and it was a year ago on the same day that the Canucks beat the Sharks 10-1. Jake DeBrusk also scored his first of the year, first of last season, when he was with the Bruins. And they talked about it, I think, in the second period or the second intermission. It was like, well, maybe that's an omen for tonight's game, or maybe that's an omen for the third period or whatever. And then he goes and scores, and I'm like, okay, whoever is doing that should probably sign up to be like a psychic or something on like one of those daytime shows. But I think that was kind of like a good moment, and then they're like, oh yeah, if Vancouver can hold on to this lead for the next 4 minutes, and then obviously the Sharks tie it with was it a minute and 17 left?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I want to say it was somewhere just below the 2-minute mark. Yeah.
It was a minute and 17 because the time on the clock was 18:43. Yeah, so the Sharks had tied it, and I was like, okay, well, overtime's gonna be fun. And I
Right.
basically just accepted it. I was like, all right, cool.
I was so excited.
I was like, I have a commercial break to go fill up my water bottle. Awesome. And then Pia Suter, who I will say, Elias Pettersson, for all the crap that he gets from the Vancouver market, he started this play, and Garland is being credited with, well, first of all, he's being credited with the first assist, which, yeah, he passed the puck to Pia Suter. But at the same time, he's being credited with creating the play. Like, yes, he gets the puck away from the boards. At the same time, the person who drives the puck into the zone in the first place to eventually create this opportunity for the Canucks is Elias Pettersson. give credit where credit is due. I don't know. Carson Soucy got his first assist of the season. First point of the season. Philip Hronek got an assist on his birthday. Tyler Toffoli didn't score a hat trick against the Canucks when playing the team he played for like all of 5 minutes. That still misses him. Because, yeah, I think when he signed with Montreal, he signed with Montreal. The first game, it was the bubble kind of season, so all the Canadian teams were all in that one division, and they would only play each other. Um, and Tyler Toffoli scored a hat trick against the Canucks as a Hab, and then when he went to Calgary, the Canucks beat the Flames 7-1. So there's that. There was an interesting situation. There were no penalties, apparently, no infractions whatsoever for the first two periods. Uh, Jay, what was your take on that?
Thank you for continuing to get better at staying out of the box, because that was one of like the problems we had on during our losing streak. It's like I felt like, I mean, obviously when you take a penalty, it takes the momentum away, gives it to your opponent, and when you're constantly making these infractions, you're just making it that much harder for you to win the game. And so it actually surprised me that when they did get a penalty called, that I hadn't even realized that we didn't even have a penalty yet in the game. So immediately I was thankful that like the Sharks have done better to to prevent themselves from going into the box so often. So that was my initial thought, was thank you, Sharks. At least you waited till like the third period before you start falling apart and you
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, you probably wouldn't have, it probably would have been better for you guys if you took more penalties because the Canucks power play is absolutely awful. Um, Ness?
Yeah. I heard the broadcasters talking about it. I was in and out of the game because my stream was cutting in and out, so I didn't get to watch all of it fully. But yeah, what Jay said, like the Sharks have had a history of struggling staying out of the penalty box. Our penalty kill hasn't been great. A lot of the times the Sharks usually get tired trying to kill those penalties, and therefore they end up losing by a big margin. But this time, they only took like 2 or 3 this game. I can't remember. And the very first one was very apparent. And like Gushtin is like a rookie still, so he's still learning. I get it. He's trying his best out there, but the kid's gonna learn eventually. It's not something to be super
he
upset about.
he like look I felt like he gripped that stick and I was like, no,
To
Goosh, no.
help him.
like he was hacking down a tree. I'm like, no.
The tree is just some 5'9" guy named Quinton. Like, no disrespect to Quinn Hughes, he's obviously the captain of my NHL team, but at the same time,
Not
yeah.
only are you gonna hack down a tree, you're gonna hack the tree down of like the player everyone's looking at.
Right.
True.
With no one around you.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
I saw Quinn fall, and then I hear on our Hockey Night Canada broadcast just, oh, and the first penalty of the game, I was like, oh, I thought, because the Hughes brothers have a penchant for just falling on the ice. Um, I mean, Jack especially, but Luke and
Yeah.
Quinn have their moments, and I thought it was just another one of those moments, but apparently not. The Canucks, for going against the Sharks in penalties, the Canucks penalty kill is top 10 of the league, which, as someone who watched like bottom 5 penalty killing from the Canucks last few years, kudos to them. But the plays that they got called on, both interference, both like kind of pick plays, like, is it necessary? Is it necessary? Like, it's just not. Like, the Phil Hronek interference call against a Foley was just not needed whatsoever. Like, I don't know. Maybe he wanted to get in another column on the score sheet because it's his birthday. Whatever. You do you, fam. But at the same time, it's not necessary. And then there was the Barclay Goodrow cross-checking against Elias Pettersson, which I mean he cross-checked him like 50 times, I think, in that one play. They show the replay and it's like he's kneading bread. Like, what is he doing? As someone who had to live through the Barclay Goodrow era of the New York Rangers, like that's what it reminded me of. But yeah, it was like Pedersen's not even doing anything. He's just kind of like standing there and he's like trying to push him back away, but then Goodrow's just going at it. But yeah, overall, I mean, good job at staying out of the box. Jake Wallman and Connor Garland had an interesting situation in the first where Wallman ended up punching Garland in the face. But
Yeah, they missed that call.
they missed the call, but it's also a trend for Garland to get punched in the face and for no call to happen. The same thing happened, I think it was last year in Tampa, or it was last year or 2 years ago. Canucks were in Tampa. Some kind of scrum ensues late in the game. Connor Garland gets punched in the face, glove hand on, fully punched in the face. No call. I don't even think any, like,
Are you?
sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, are you sure there isn't like a private group chat where it's like the entire league and there's just like
It
one
wouldn't.
player on each team or something
I
and
wouldn't
just in it's like an
Hasn't really punched
inside
in the
joke or
face.
something to punch him?
I wouldn't be surprised because just okay, so it was also for the Canucks, there was a bunch of different milestones. So it was Derek Forbort's 500th NHL game, Phil Pronik's 400th NHL game, and Carson Soucy's 300th NHL game, all in the same game. So I'm going through and I made the graphics for the Instagram page for Game Over. And I'm going through it. I found this headline about Carson Soucy gets suspended for 1 game for like charging or something. And I click on the link, and the player he got the charging call against was Connor Garland, and now they're teammates. And then I found another picture of Carson Soucy and JT Miller like fighting, but that was when Soucy was in Seattle, before coming to the Canucks. And but yeah, Garland getting hit by Soucy when he was playing for Arizona. Also, that one clip where Nathan McKinnon, there's a scrum. It was Arizona versus Colorado, forgot what season, but Garland's helmet comes off and is laying on the ice. Nathan McKinnon picks it back up and throws it at him. And
I remember that one.
yeah, I remember that clip, but like, why is it always him in these situations? I get it, he's a pest. And I get it, he's now on the ice a lot of the time because he's evolved into that kind of player. And at the same time, why is it always him in these situations? He was the one who got his face busted up when he was in Arizona because a puck went off of his face into the net. He scored with his face. It's always Connor Garland. He's always at the center of it, and I don't really understand it. Um, yeah. I know there was a few players who ended up disappearing from the benches throughout the game for the Sharks. I know Wallman was one. Did Nico Sturm also, he left for a little bit, or was he just still on the bench, like kind of injured? Because was it like a shot block or something? It was
I
early in the game. I'm trying to
I don't
remember.
I don't
remember.
recall. I don't
Okay.
recall that. Yeah, I think Wallman was probably like the most notable leaving the bench in the
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, like you said, he's basically the defense. So
Right.
yeah, I I understand the worry there. Like if Quinn Hughes left a game, I think that would be like a 5 alarm. Um, um, and then there was also they mentioned like Tyler Toffoli left the bench at one moment, and that was like, does no one want to like? Is there something? Is there like a leak coming from the roof? Because I know
Everyone's
that.
taking bathroom breaks.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we're the Vancouver Canucks. We had Roberto Luongo in that one playoff game. We know. But um, I was just gonna say, like, is the roof leaking on one specific spot on the bench, and they just have to keep going to like get dried off or something? I just know the roof leaks over here in Vancouver a lot, so I don't know if it's the same thing down in San Jose. But yeah, it was interesting because they were just it kind of felt like a revolving door. Do you think that's something to worry about going forward for the Sharks, or?
I hope not. Toffoli's usually he's been playing well except for the past few games. If he got injured, I feel like as much as the Sharks were struggling to score in this game, Toffoli didn't do anything, but he is one of the guys that has been very involved in a lot of plays to make those goals happen. So I hope it's nothing serious, because sometimes the players will leave, they'll come back in the game, but then the next day they're like, oh, they're put on IR because whatever it is tweaked. But I hope it's not one of those situations.
Yeah. I mean, kind of like Celebrini, he was injured in the preseason, right? And then he still
Right.
played one game. It was one game, right? And he scored.
Yeah.
Yeah, he scores, plays one game, and then is immediately just out. And it's like, alrighty then. Feel bad for everybody who took him in fantasy really early.
That's me. Thank you. What a tease.
I yeah, I took a lot of players. Last year my luck of players getting sent down was not good. Like I had Devin Levi for a bit, and that wasn't good. This year the only player I've had that's got sent down was Josh Doan.
Hmm.
So I mean, all right. I don't
How
know.
are you gonna know?
How are you
How are
gonna
you
know?
gonna
I just get notifications on the app and I'm like, okay, cool, bye. I
Yeah.
replaced. I was like, who plays the same positions as you? Ah, Warren Fogle.
Who's that?
I don't. He plays for LA now apparently. I thought he
Oh.
was still an Oiler. I don't know. People show up on different teams sometimes, and I'm like, oh, you're there now. Um, I feel like that's a lot of the um just getting to know who's on which team the first month in the NHL is just yeah. Speaking of who's who in the NHL, very new addition for the San Jose Sharks, Timothy Liljegren is
Sure.
apparently how it's pronounced actually, and he decided after many years in Toronto to say, "Hey guys, this is how I want you to pronounce it." And it's just like, "Oh, wow, I feel bad." As someone
Well, did you see? There's a little bit of a confusion because when he was in Toronto, apparently the Leafs had put out a video where the players were pronouncing their names so the fans would know, and he pronounced it with the Y sound.
oh,
So it's a little confusing why he wants it with the J sound now.
I I mean, to each their own. As someone who's been called like every iteration of the J sound like in their name under the sun, like it's like Kaja. There's been a lot. But in terms of how you kind of fit into the Sharks lineup tonight and potentially going forward, what's kind of like the consensus about the trade and his performance thus far? Uh,
His one game.
his one game.
I thought he was pretty solid. Uh,
Go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say I didn't really notice him out there, which means he's playing pretty well, right? No mistakes. That's all I want to say. Go ahead, Jay.
As far as the trade, I mean, we're I feel like I'm accepting that people are gonna be brought in and we may or may not keep them for the long haul. We're obviously trying to build up our prospect pool again, and if there's a player that, for one reason or another, we can flip and acquire assets for the future that would benefit us more than the player being there. Like I guess with trades, like with Benning leaving, I mean, he was kind of our seventh defenseman this season. He was already scratched like a few times. I mean, we've got like I think Jack Thompson has played just as many games as Benning had, and Thrun's kind of like more or less like more part of the third pairing, then Benning felt like he was holding the fort down there. So when that trade came along, it just kind of felt like, yeah, that's another one of those moves that we get a younger defenseman who is kind of just not working out in Toronto. I watched like Dangle's assessment of the trade earlier today to kind of get a feel from like the Toronto side of it, like why he didn't really work out, because I don't really catch like Leafs games unless we play against them, and I just vaguely remember Lil Jagrin. I think it was around the season where like I think maybe Riley was out and he like spent some time like on power play one. So like I'm like cool, but be nice moving forward to kind of know like he was projected to go really early during his draft year, and then like I guess the reason why the Leafs took him is because he kept dropping back and back and back, and so he kind of sounds like a bit like he needs a change of scenery, project player. We just kind of have that room to allow people to uh find a new home and kind of work on themselves. And so this being his first game with us, I do recall that they put him out there for, I believe, power play one, which is kind of either Wallman or Thompson. Like they've been kind of trading off being on that first power play unit. So there were a couple of flashes of like, oh, that's interesting, but not anything that I can like say, oh, that was really changing the game or anything like that. So, but trade wise, I'm optimistic. Especially there was a breakdown of like the picks that we traded with Benning and how that kind of like the bigger picture of like where we acquire those and whatever. So it doesn't really feel like, oh, we made a bad trade by moving our seventh defenseman with a handful of picks. Like it's a good opportunity. And if it doesn't work out, I'm not gonna feel like, oh man, like we made like, oh, that was a waste of time. So I'm looking forward to maybe he just needed that change of scenery. And one thing I learned from Dangle's assessment of the Leafs time, his time with the Leafs, was that he wasn't as great as they wanted him to be defensively. So I guess that's one of the big things I'm going to be looking for, because we obviously the Sharks they need to tighten up their defense, and I feel like they did a pretty decent job of it. But we don't really need somebody out there who's going to be notorious for that being their weak point.
Yeah, I've learned to trust Greer's judgment at this point. We've had him as a GM for a couple seasons now, and I haven't disagreed with any of his moves yet, except for one, but we don't want to talk about that right now. It was Hurdle.
Yep.
It's bittersweet more than we knew it was going to happen. It's just not to them.
Right. But that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with his game plan, right? With Lil Jagrin, I think he has a lot to prove right now. So I kind of have a little bit of faith in that he's going to show up in the ways that the Sharks need him to, at least for now. So
Yeah, I mean, I kind of understand the hard feelings with with Hurdle, because that would be like when they traded Bo Horvat a couple years ago for the Canucks. That would be like if they traded him to like Edmonton, I feel. So, I kind of get that. That would mean a Canadian team would have to win the cup though. So, anyway, um, speaking of Matt Benning and trusting GMs, I just want to point out nephew of Jim Benning, former Canucks GM, who was drafted by Boston while Jim Benning was an AGM with Boston. So there you go. Fun fact of the day, Jim Benning got fired on my birthday. Okay, let's get into our next little bit. But before we do that, I just wanted to remind you, Game Over is an independent production focused on community, inclusion, and quality people. If you're interested in supporting the Game Over network, we have crowdfunding options available. In the description of this episode, you'll find a link to our Patreon page, and we're also working on a page through LaRouche, a crowdfunding platform for companies originating in Quebec. For La Ruche, we're aiming to raise $15K, and if we hit that goal, we'll gain access to government grants that will allow us to employ more people. If you have any ideas for what you'd like to see as giveaways from these crowdfunding efforts, let us know in the comments on Twitter, Instagram, or our Discord server. And also, like the stream, subscribe, sound off in the chat. Every little bit helps there. All right. Ongoing kind of storylines. I wanted to pose this question to both of you first, before we get into any of that. From an outsider perspective on the Vancouver Canucks, do they look at all like the elite team like they have been touted to be? Jay?
It definitely seems like you guys could be doing a whole lot better, and I mean, I'm happy with where the Sharks were for this game, but I feel like it shouldn't be out of the ordinary for where the Canucks should be with where they should be in the league to have not struggled against us. Like I felt like there were a lot of good things that Sharks did to keep the Canucks to the boards. And then I mean you guys also did a good job during like on the PK of I don't even remember if we got a shot on net. Like it's just like the moment we got the puck, it's like keeping them to the perimeter and getting into the sticks and everything like that. But for an entertaining game of it being such a close on the score sheet up until like the last half of the third, where they were really trying to pull the momentum in one direction or the other. And then on top of that, on the side of fantasy, Elias Pettersson has been not so great on my team right now. So I would like to pose the question of how do you feel about Pettersson right now? Because I'm very curious why I'm seeing zeros.
Well, Randy on the broadcast mentioned that he was diagnosed with tendonitis in his knee last season. And so he's like, I wonder if that's what's contributing to his slow start. So
he also talked about the contract.
Oh yeah, that too.
That happened around the same time, actually. I believe was the tendonitis situation and the when he re-signed, that was in January for the contract extension, because it was always like a point of contention, as it always is. I mean, with one player or another on a team with this many, I'm gonna say it, all-stars. We had like 6 last year. Well, I mean 5, and then we traded for Lindholm. Because the Canucks will always make a trade during the All-Star weekend. It is inevitable. But yeah, I mean, like last year was Elias Pettersson. This year it's Brock Besser, who is a UFA at the end of this year, and that totally does not terrify me. If there's just been so much talk about Elias Pettersson that it's just I'm just kind of been numb to it, because every time you open Twitter or open Instagram or I will turn on the radio in my car, and no matter what time of the day, there's either some random thing about the Raptors or it's and I don't really understand basketball all that well. So I'm like, okay, cool. It's either that or they're talking about Elias Pettersson, because he is our highest paid player. He's getting paid about as much as, oh, like in comparison, I'm trying to think of, was it Austin Matthews who had this similar contract before? I don't really keep up with
I believe you.
Yeah, it's 11 something million, and I'm like, you know what? It's way too much money that I'll never see in my life. So, you know what? It's a big number. That's all I know. It's in the neighborhood of 11 million. And people are just like, okay, so what now? Like, a couple games ago, he scored his first goal. That was 5-on-5, and it was his first goal 5-on-5 since March. So people are, yeah, and he kind of didn't show up a lot in the postseason, or basically since that stretch since January, when he got the tendonitis issue, and people are wondering, is it still that lingering from last year? Because obviously injuries can continue on. I mean, Thatcher Demko has had, I'm pretty sure, that same issue of injuries leaving and coming back for like the last 2 full seasons. Injuries could stay for a long time. Gabriel Landeskog hasn't played since he won the Stanley Cup in 2022. Like, there's these situations, and I'm obviously not saying that Elias Pettersson is in the same situation as a Gabriel Landeskog, for example. At the same time, like, I feel like I understand wanting your big name players to play to what their contract is. At the same time, I feel like there needs to be a bit of grace offered because they're all focused in on this one guy that's supposedly the problem for the Canucks, when it's like, no, there are other players on the roster who are not performing up to their abilities. The power play is 5 players. Like, power play 1 is 5 players, not just the one guy. Like, the main power play performer last season was Brock Besser. He was credited with the only shot on our second power play this season. This game. Like, the power play overall, a lot of these all-stars aren't doing as well. I would say probably our best player currently is either Kevin Lankinen or Connor Garland, and that's saying something. So the fact that, like, because JT Miller needs to step up a little bit. Quinn Hughes at times, like, yes, sure, he's breaking all these records. Does it matter? Yes, in the long scheme of things, but at the moment he's not performing up to the standard level. I mean, and I Brock Besser scoring, that's kind of like what they want him to do. That's it, pretty much. So I'll leave him at that, but a lot of their player, Jake DeBrusk, he hadn't scored until this game tonight, and he was kind of cold to start the season as well last year. They mentioned he scored his first goal 10 games into the season on November 2nd, and then didn't score again for 7 games. So I'm like, are we expecting that for Jake DeBrusk? Sure. A lot of players go through cold streaks. I think they're only focusing in on Elias Pettersson because he's had a lot of elite flashes throughout his career, especially when he was younger. At the same time, they need to understand the evolution of a player, because he's definitely got more, I would say, more of a two-way player than he was when he first started, because I feel like he was more offensively minded. Now he's a bit more spread out. At the same time, like, offer a little bit of grace for the guy. I don't know. There's just been a lot of discourse going on, and I had a whole like 20-minute rant on this a few episodes ago, and I was just like, can we just stop for 5 minutes talking about Elias Pettersson?
This is giving shades of Erik Karlsson on the Sharks.
I was just gonna say that. I was waiting for Kaja to.
No, don't.
Because I was just thinking, like we could cut this part and just insert Erik Karlsson's name everywhere you say Pettersson.
Yeah, because he was our highest paid player when he was here, right? And then he wasn't performing up to his pig whatever, and the fans were furious with him, and they it felt like they drove him out because anything he did, he was like hated. He's not doing enough. This team sucks. Like they expected him to have the Sharks be good just because he would play on the team. He broke the what was it, 100 points his last season with the Sharks, and it still wasn't good enough for fans. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Fans won't be happy unless you win a cup, you know? Like, it is what it is.
The amount of arguments I had to get into with friends, just and it wasn't even like I was trying to have those conversations. It was just like they would talk about it, and then I felt the need to defend Erik Karlsson, and then over time it was just like I just tapped out. Anytime I heard his name, I'm like, we're not having this conversation. I don't want to talk about him anymore because I like you're already you're stuck in your way, and at this point, what, he's like on his third whatever year with us, and like, you know, the 100-point season. It's like, if that doesn't impress you, then we might as well not talk about it.
Right. We dubbed the Sharks the San Jose Eric Carlsons that season because he was the only one doing
Yeah.
anything.
I mean, that's kind of iconic, I can't lie. I need to find out because I'm pretty sure it was 2 years ago that Elias Pettersson got. Yeah, it was 22-23 when the Canucks were awful. He had 102 points. And he almost hit 40 goals. Last year he
They're
only
the
had
same
89.
person.
Yeah. They're the same person. They play completely. Oh, he's a -2 this year. Anyway, um plus minus doesn't matter anymore. They took the award away in like 2017. It's interesting you give like the Erik Karlsson comparison though too, because it's like, is a player only warranted their time because of like is a player only warranted their criticism because of how much they're paid? I feel like that's a conversation that needs to be had because it feels like no one's complaining about Sidney Crosby making $8.7 million a year because he's just so dead set on that contract amount. Whereas, and like he can not perform, he can perform all he wants with these lower deadlock contracts that are written. I feel like there's less scrutiny towards those kind of players versus the higher paid players when they're not performing as well. Like, take the McDavids of the world, the Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Draisaitl, like those guys. When they're not performing well, it's like all of a sudden hell breaks loose. Whereas if you knock a couple $1 million off that contract, is it still as big of a deal? Because when the Canucks were really bad in 22-23, it was right after they signed the JT Miller deal, and that was a big contract, and everyone was like focusing in on that one deal. Like, I feel like it's something to do with, we're paying you all this money, please perform for us. And I get it, there's an entertainment aspect of the game. At the same time, like, it's a little bit different. You're not paying, like, it's not like you're paying $500 to go see the Eras tour. Like, like you're, it's not the same level of paying for the experience or whatever. At a point it is. At the same time, you need to like understand that just because the team and the management and the ownership made a decision to pay this player does not mean that this player, because they don't score a goal for a few games, that doesn't mean that they deserve to be put on the stake.
I feel like contract discussions around contracts and players should be seen differently. Well, I know it's frustrating when a player who is paid as much as Pedersen or Carlson isn't performing to standards or whatever. I think in a way fans should start seeing it in like they earned that contract from previous play, right? It's not just because okay, you're making this much, you have to perform at this level all the time. Like it and like Jay and I talk about this a lot on our podcast. It's like fans forget that these athletes are humans. They think they're superhuman and they can perform at these high levels all the time. And if they dip for whatever reason, personal reasons, or these guys go through mental health issues that you don't know about. They go through personal issues, family emergencies, injuries that they don't disclose to the fans. Um, and like, I think fans should give these players more grace for that. Regarding Pedersen, you don't know if his knee is the one acting up. Tendonitis doesn't really go away. You can do exercises to strengthen the muscles around it so it doesn't bother you as much, but like that's pretty much a lifelong injury. So like he can do what he can do. Be upset, but sending him death threats, insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I was at a friend's house the other night and her mom came down just to talk to us for a second, and she asked me, she's like, "Oh yeah, how's Game Over going? Oh yeah, also, what's going on with Elias Pettersson?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." I'm not having a conversation with my friend's mom about this player. Like, I was like, well, he was injured last year, and now it's just, it's a lot. It's a lot of noise, frankly, and I feel like it needs to be tuned down a little bit, and I hope that he has a circle around him that's tuning it out. I think it was said, I believe it was from like the 32 Thoughts Elliot Friedman podcast. That was like, if you're Elias Pettersson's friend or family and you're sending him articles about himself that are, negative in nature, if you're doing that, you're not his friend. And I was like, okay. T? Anyway, but I agree with that. Why would you? That's like if like Beyonce released an album and there was a review thing discrediting it and Jay-Z texts her, "Hey, wife." Like wife, here's your album review. And it's like, what are you doing, man? Like, it's kind of like, just take a second. In a real life situation, imagine they posted your grades for every exam you did, and you did really bad on one exam, and somebody writes a review about your exam results, and your best friend sends it to you, and you're like, okay, what the heck? Why are you sending this to me? Like, it's just gonna make me feel worse. That's basically the somewhat equivalent of what they're doing in that situation. So I feel like, yeah, their mental health needs to be accounted for in that situation, and it's honestly just not in this market. Jay, do you have any other takes on that before we move on?
I forgot what the topic was. We went from talking about Pedersen to talking about Carlson to social media. Are you asking for me to piggyback off of the mental health part?
I think it was more just like the what did I say was the topic at the beginning? Oh, like I asked you guys how the Canucks were that we started talking about Elias Pettersson, just the Elias Pettersson situation and high paid contracts and treating players like people. Just kind of your take on that.
Pick one.
Pick one.
Um, yeah, I mean, like if we're gonna go back to the Eric Carlson and Elias Pettersson comparison, like I mean, at the end of the day, hockey is a team sport, and if and then the person who's the highest paid player, it's like Ness said that they earned that contract. It isn't like okay, we're giving you money in advance to for an expectation. It's like, no, this is like you showed us what you can do. Now here's your reward. And then, I mean, yeah, you would hope that if they're the player that's getting paid the most on your team, that they're gonna be able to perform like and have amazing season year after year after year. But like the one of the biggest criticisms, which I feel aligns to what you were talking about earlier with like there's other stars on your team that are not quite doing as well, but maybe they don't make as much, so then they don't get the cameras in their face and asking like, well, why are you the problem with like on the power play, blah blah blah. And it's like there's four other guys who are supposed to be or whatever on the unit that's supposed to help drive the play, and like I can do all these things, but if I pass it to someone and they don't connect to the back of the net, it's like let's not go and blame the dude who's like, well, out of all these guys who make X amount of money, it's like you're the one who makes the most, so why aren't you helping it to get to the net? Like the worst case scenario, people are in this last week, they were going on Pedersen's like social media, and I just have so much respect for players that do continue to have any sort of platform that they use to put really, I mean, at the end of the day, they're probably just putting family stuff on there, but it gives people this like this feeling like, oh, they have access to this player, and at the end of the day, like they're still human. Like I get that you only see them as like a hockey player, but like people need to respect boundaries that this dude, it's not like this is their job. Like he's not just trying to, oh cool, I got 11 million now, time to just chill in the back of my car and let everyone drive the truck. I mean, I'm sure he's out there struggling to, to help the team out. And I don't know, I just feel like people, like, I get it, like you're upset that the team's not winning. But that doesn't mean you have to go and like, oh, I'm gonna tell him how I feel because I'm such a diehard fan. And it's like, no, you're probably just like not helping to keep this dude motivated to stay here for the long term. Like take a step back. Remember, this is just a game. And I hope for all players that are struggling and dealing in this type of scenario, or really just anyone in general who's just going through something, like people just kind of give them grace and they have a support unit to and oh yeah, and then don't send them articles about like, oh, look at all this crap people are saying. Like, no, that's not going to help them whatsoever.
Yeah, like it's like, imagine if a bunch of the Canucks went to your job and were just yelling at you the whole time, like, "Hey,
Look at this.
you put that board down wrong, dude. Knock it
You type
off."
too slow. What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. You gotta get some power typing on that. Like, oh, that's how hockey players talk in my brain. Anyway, um, before we get into a little bit of how rebuilds feel and work, just wanted to mention our show Game On the Game Over Network Hub channel. Game Over has you covered after the game, but in order to get ready to watch any NHL action, you've got to get your game on too. Game On NHL is a short form daily news podcast covering everything you need to know across the league. Get all your NHL news in under 10 minutes Monday through Friday on the Game Over Network YouTube channel and in podcast form, which you can find at thegameovernetwork.com. All right. So, pulled up a QR code too soon. All right, the San Jose Sharks are in a bit of a rebuild era. Ness, how does that feel?
I think they're perfect. What do you mean they're in a rebuild? They've been in a rebuild for like 5 years now. Ever since Pavelski left. What year was that? 2020, I believe, was the year they didn't sign it. No, 2019, because that was the last time they were in playoffs. Oh, it's been so long. It feels good right now because we're actually seeing progress, improvements. Like today, they didn't get blown out. You saw them connecting when passing the pucks. You saw the youngsters out there doing what they're doing, improving every game. Last game, Will Smith, he was our last year's draft pick, 4th overall. He scored 2 goals, his first 2 goals of his career. That was exciting. Things are looking really bright. For those of you who don't keep up with like the AHL teams, the Sharks minor league team, the Barracuda, are currently like top of their league, or maybe they're second. Either way, they're up at the top, and like the new goalie that we acquired over the offseason, Askarov, he hasn't lost a game with the Barracuda yet. Like we're really excited with which direction this team is headed. Currently the Sharks are struggling, obviously, but it doesn't feel as doom and gloom as it did last season. So like leading up to opening night this year, you could feel the buzz around, like the fans getting excited. We got Celebrini 1st overall this past draft. Will Smith signed to play this season. We're getting to see like flashes of the young guys coming up to the Sharks every so often, and I don't know, like it feels exciting to see what direction these guys are headed in right now. So, Jay.
Yeah, no, it's been exciting. Like, obviously, right before, I mean, yes, we've been in a rebuild far longer than we have used the actual word in broadcast. It always felt like that, like, hush, hush, don't say that word. Like, they're like retooling, reworking. And it's like, no, we're rebuilding. Say the word, say it. Like it should have, in my mind, it should have been done like back around like the 2018 like ish framework. Like by the time we got Eric Carlson, it was more or less like I feel from the outside looking in where the Penguins are right now. Like they're trying to hang on to those final few years with the core. They brought in Eric Carlson to help them out, and I think we're ahead of them. Or no, that's the Predators we're ahead of. Like the Pens are not doing as great as they should, and I'm like, oh, that's cute. We were there once. We were there X amount of years ago. I know what that feels like. And that was awful because you're like, I really wish we could be in real rebuild, but because we're not and we're gonna make the playoffs, I'm like, yay, let's try and do something with this team, even though it's like, it doesn't feel like it's going to be sustainable to get you to the cup. And then we just went through coach after coach, and then finally once you're just waiting for them to say like, please, please, please just start tearing it all down. Like once we finally got to do that, I think that's when I started getting excited, because it's those previous seasons, it was just like, what are we even doing? Like you're trying to tell me have hope for this team, and it's like, no, we're terrible. And so when we got the new GM and we got to start rebuilding, then I mean it is a transition to, I mean the franchises had like the better half of like 2 decades we were making the playoffs like all the time, and there was that time frame where on the national level they were picking the Sharks to win the cup. So it's a different feeling to now that's not the focus, like, oh, I hope we make the playoffs, we're going to make the playoffs and get the cup. Like now it's exciting to be interested in the drafts. Like we were so excited this offseason when we got the first overall pick. Like obviously we were going to pick Celebrini, and the final year that they did the in-person draft, it was just, I don't know, it was like it was everything that I thought it was going to be. It was super exciting. All the off-season changes that were made, and all like Ness said with the Barracuda, there's a lot of exciting prospects coming through the pipeline. It like I've never experienced getting to watch my team in this sort of context. So it's been really exciting to be on this journey for this team and get to kind of see them from the ground up, and then hopefully 5 or whatever seasons from now, we get to now take what we're seeing and get back into that playoff atmosphere. So yeah, it's an exciting time for me personally, just from because I'm excited for the rebuild. It's not so great for what it seems like for the casual fan. Like I've noticed some of my friends who are very casual and enjoy hockey, but don't really follow the CUDA, don't really know like all these prospects. Like it's hard for them to be interested in it. Like the weeknight games, we're still like, you can tell all the empty seats, but I don't know. Like it's not my job to market the team to these casual fans, but for me, I'm just having a lot of fun like talking and getting hyped for all these young and up and coming guys.
Yeah, I think it is a point to be made that like when your team is doing better, that's when you start getting attention. Because I'm like, I had no idea this many Canucks fans that I went to high school with. I didn't know they existed. Because the Canucks when I was in high school were horrifically mid. So that was part of the betting era of darkness. And then we kind of got free to that, made the playoffs this year, and all of a sudden, like, oh, there was a flash of it in 2020, but at the same time, lockdowns, quarantine, the bubble playoffs, it wasn't in our building. Like, there was all that kind of going on as well. So you also couldn't really celebrate. But then now, this past season, when we made the playoffs, it was a huge thing. And it's like, okay, Vancouver's gonna go win the cup, like they're gonna do all this things. And that's when like the attention started to skyrocket. Whereas the season or two before, it was down in the gutter. Like 22-23 was a horrific year. The 0-7 start for the Canucks really brought down any, yeah, casual fan kind of interest in the team. And I feel the Canucks did somewhat of a retool. I don't even know what to call what the Canucks did. I think it's because like retool, I guess, but you traded your captain. Um, I don't really know. But yeah, I think the Canucks were just kind of stagnating for a number of years, and then 2021, the fallout from the loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins in December of that year happened, and then just every it's just been kind of up and down the last few years. Depends on coaching, depends on who you bring in, who's in net, even like it depends on a lot of factors. I think the Sharks have a really interesting or not interesting is not the right word I wanted to exciting and promising honestly future like headed through the pipeline of through the AHL through prospects, and also like I feel like some of the more experienced veteran guys that they've brought in this offseason, like Tyler Toffoli, do add a lot of kind of they add a lot of experience, but add a lot of I don't want to say
Production, really.
protection. I was gonna say like role models and stuff for like a lot of the younger
Sure.
players too, but I mean Joe Thornton's still around and he's apparently Celebrini's landlord, so like I thought that was a joke. I but yeah, I don't know what you guys have in the water over there, but there's something with like Marlowe, Pavelski, and Thornton now all becoming like surrogate parents to rookies for some reason, or just young players in general, because I swear Mitch Marner is like Patrick Marlowe's like other son. Yeah.
We're waiting for him to make his way over here too.
Maybe,
Just kidding.
maybe when Toronto chases him out because he's not scoring 200 points a season. Um, yeah, I will say Pacific Division hockey is way more fun when the Sharks are in it. It was really fun growing up watching the Sharks and the Canucks in the playoffs, especially with that one goal that Kevin BX scored that you guys probably don't want to talk about.
I
But
wasn't a fan then, so
oh, okay, I was 8, and I was only allowed to watch past the second period because it was past my bedtime. Otherwise, I was only allowed to watch past the second period during playoffs. So overtimes were very special, and so that goal is very special. Anyway, before we move on to our little bit last bit here, just wanted to mention what better way to support something you love than by rocking it as clothing? Game Over's apparel line has dropped with 3 unique designs. Whether you feel the nostalgic pull of our retro skater design, want to make a statement with our established design, which is currently on sale, want to wear your love for goalies proudly with our live and die but the goalie design, or if you just need another coffee to get through the winter, we have you covered. Designed by Brady Shalis from Game Over Winnipeg, use the QR code on stream now and take a look through our apparel store and help us rebuild local sports media in Canada while repping your community. All right. Basically this part of the show is just to talk about anything we really want to talk about for the last little bit. So sound off in the chat. And it's basically a Q&A. Could be about Shark, could be about Canucks, could be about astrophysics. I don't know.
I won't be able to answer those.
I I can use my like what like 60% I think I have right now in my physics class. I'm like cool.
Nice. That's
It
more than me.
it's not for it's supposed to be like oh yeah for all students, open to all students to understand, and I'm in there and I'm like okay.
Do you? Do you understand?
I know who Neil deGrasse Tyson is. I'm hoping that's enough. But yeah, there was an interesting note in the chat from earlier in the stream that I kind of bookmarked in my brain for a little later. What would be the soap opera's name for every hockey team in the NHL? I don't really want to
Every
go I don't want to go over every team because I feel like that will be a very long time to discuss, but let's start with the Sharks. We'll go with the Sharks and the Canucks.
Uh,
I need some time to think about that.
I, I'm not good with on the fly.
Right.
Can
Need some
I
time.
can I give a suggestion for like the California teams that are just like
Sure.
constantly rebuild? Misery Loves Company.
You know, I'll take it.
I
I mean, that was kind of my vibe last season when we were just like losing, and then I was like bitter and happy when teams got blown out and be like, "Ha, yes."
that's what it feels like. Yeah, I don't know. I was just like, that sounds like a soap opera name. Yeah, I feel like the 23-24 Sharks and Ducks, that would be a good name if you had like a sitcom about them.
Sure. We sucked.
Well, so did they, so
Yeah, they still do.
yep. Um, and I want to include LA in there as well because
Why not?
why not? I mean, they're oh, goaltending. Anyway, because they have Riddick and Kemper, I think.
Oh yeah, that doesn't seem
No,
great.
like it's every time David Riddick is in net, I swear it's like a beer league stat line. It's somewhat atrocious for NHL. Like I know we just had a whole conversation about not judging players for like all that stuff, but like what is this guy
It's okay, it's
doing?
the Kings.
The Kings don't count.
The Kings and the Ducks are fair game, so
Yeah, and the Oilers. Um, I'll put that hat in there. But yeah, Kings fair game. You know what? They tweeted "You're welcome" in 2012, and you know everything's been karma since then. So yeah, I
nice.
I remember that very well. Um, I can't think of one for the Canucks though. Maybe I just had the thought. Maybe people are mad at Elias Pettersson because he can actually afford to buy a house in Vancouver. I
You
feel
know,
that could be part of it because I there's it's ridiculously expensive here. I think
sure.
it's the highest real estate market in Canada, which is saying something because real estate's whew, uh through most of the country too and a lot of the big cities. Yeah, um, like there's some houses. Like, I think former Canuck Alex Edler sold his house for like or is selling his house for like 8 million or something like that. Like his old house or state of Vancouver, and I'm just like, somebody put it on something, and I was like, $8 million for, and it was like a tiny little thing, and I'm like, huh. So maybe that's why everyone's jealous. But then, um, Lexi Lafleur Brown goes on Twitter and she's like, yeah, they get paid bi-weekly like everybody else, but they get taxed in all the different states. And I'm like, holy, okay. Um,
I bet players don't like playing in California because the taxes are pretty high up here.
I was just thinking of Dodonov and how that whole Vegas thing was it like a couple of seasons ago where they tried to trade him to the Ducks, but the Ducks were on his no trade list because likely he didn't want to pay all the taxes out here in California. Yeah.
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, at least you know the Sharks won't pick up John Tavares' contract. Sorry.
We don't want him. He burned us once already. We don't want
I
him.
mean, we don't even have the room like we with the hurdle trade.
Right.
So
Wait, what was the retention on that one?
it's just we don't have any slots left. We bought out.
Oh, yeah.
We're still on the hook for Brent Burns and I think
Carlson.
Jones.
Brent Burns.
Jones
is
still
it? I was looking at it the other day. We've got several people. I was telling me and Nate were talking about it because I looked at. I think this year is our final year with retention to Brett Burns. And then there's a second person, I can't think of their name right now. But I was like, oh, I'm so excited to 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 pay off some of this debt. And we were talking about like, yeah, Mike Greer with getting us debt free. And I'm like, yeah, good credit score, Greer.
Whoa, okay. There's all right, there's Brent Burns is this is the last year. It's also there's performance bonus cushion excess something you guys are being charged.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Then there's the Nikolai
Knizhov.
Knizhov buyout, which I mean it's not a lot, but it goes until 2026. Then there's the Martin Jones buyout, which is until 2027. Eric
Mm.
Carlson retained is until 2027, and Hurdle retained until 2028.
Yeah.
And
Nikolai Kanisha.
I think this is why the Hurdle trade stung so much too, because we're paying him to play for Vegas. What the
yeah.
hell?
There's and also there's Logan Couture is still being paid until 2027. So
He's still on the team though.
he's still on the team. Has because
He's not playing, but
he's dealt with
he's
some
still
injuries, right? Like,
Yeah.
is he?
I feel like he's gonna be our Gabriel Landeskog.
Yeah. He
Yeah,
only played 6 games last season and
I
is
mean,
injured.
He hasn't even been skating yet.
Yeah.
at least he's played since what, June 2022, or June 2022.
Yeah, the 6
So
games.
yeah, well, no, he played a full season in
Right.
22-23.
Did
So
he? I don't remember him out there.
82 games, 67 points. Was that
That's just a
sarcasm?
yeah, it was.
Okay.
That was a dig at our captain.
Oh, well, that's fair enough. I mean, yeah, he because they're like, "Oh yeah, Logan Couture's still injured." And I'm like, "What's going on? What is it with like captains just disappearing on teams lately?" Gabriel Landeskog
It-
gone.
It's
Look,
the weight of the sea.
They're entitled, like
I mean, like I know there are some captains in Vancouver's history that they really wish would have just disappeared, but that was before my time. Anyway, um yeah, like Logan Couture gone, Jonathan Taves gone, Gabriel Landeskog wins cup gone. Like, was Nick Suzuki the captain of the Canadians at the time? Because I'm just gonna say de facto captain Carey Price gone. Like it's what is the trend of like do I have to worry about Quinn Hughes?
I hope not.
Do I have to put like an insurance policy on a guy I've never met? Like what is going on here? Um yeah, it's weird, but I mean all 32 teams have a captain now.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, because I think the last outlier was, well, Arizona didn't have
Yeah,
one since they traded OEL, which that worked out well. Well, for him, he got a cup, but anyway, um, and Seattle had an outlier because they named Mark Giordano their first captain, and then they traded him their first season
immediately. Yeah.
immediately. Um, and yeah, so they didn't have a captain. They named Jordan Eberle captain.
Right.
So
Wait, who's Utah's captain? I forgot.
Keller? Is it Clayton
Oh,
Keller?
is it?
I think so.
I want to say
Uh,
so. Probably. That sounds familiar.
List of NHL
he's
captains.
he's the only player I know on that team, to be honest with you.
Clayton Keller. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he was named this season. So, okay. There were there were a lot of captains named this season. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
I
6,
think
7.
Anaheim also.
Yeah, Anaheim was Radko Gudas, which was an odd choice in my opinion. I thought it was going to be Troy
Just
Terry.
because he's the oldest one there.
Yeah, yeah.
Just like by default, why they named Foligno the Hawks captain.
Well, yeah, because they're not gonna name Connor Bedard. Like he could be in my first year lecture. Like that's a child. Like please don't do that again. Like I know it worked out with Sydney and Connor and well we just talked about Landeskog and okay eventually it worked out for him but not um like yeah at the same time chill that's a child. Like, you're already like the NHL's not defeating the child labor allegations. Anyway, that's a joke. um, then it was Rasmus Dahlin for the Sabres because Oposo was their last captain, and then he got traded to Florida, won the cup, retired. Blackhawks, yeah, Foligno, Kraken, Eberle, Tampa because they didn't re-sign Stamkos, so they named Hedman captain, which I feel like was the better choice, because like who else would it be? Like it's either Hedman or it's like what Kucherov? No. Like I have more leadership and a pinky nail than that man probably has in his body. Just say, like
The tantrums.
the tantrums, the press, like the a whole press conference after they beat Montreal in the finals is just ick. It's the ick. Utah, Clayton Keller, and then Toronto with the little swap of Tavares and Austin Matthews. So that's the captains that got changed this year. But yeah, I mean, do we see a new captain for San Jose in the near future?
Unfortunately, not.
Okay.
They've made it. No, I mean, my thing is like it. I don't see how it makes sense to have your captain on injured reserve. Like I get it. Like they're like, oh, Couture's still our captain, blah blah blah, and I just I
What
would
good is
rather
it?
someone on the ice on the ice have it.
Right.
Yeah, like somebody that's in the room day in, day out, rather than somebody who, like, I get it. You can still be in the room, but you're not in the room the same way. Like, you're
Mm.
still, technically, you're in the press box. Like, if you're at the game at all and you're not, like, recovering or something, yeah, that is a point. I feel like Colorado needs to have that conversation too because Landeskog's like, no, I'm not retiring. I'm not retiring. Like the last time I've been in my current college longer than he's been the entire time he's been not playing. So, and I'm almost graduating. So
That's
like
crazy.
that's yeah, like that's when you need a little bit of reality check, dude. I feel yeah, Colorado could have that conversation. At the same time, I feel like they also have more players that are established as potential leaders. Um, would I mean, potential leaders in that market, let's say,
Mm.
like McKinnon, McCarr, etc. Whereas, like San Jose, since a lot of your core is young, I'm not sure
Yep.
that that's like the proper direction to go in right now. But at the same time, having a captain that's not really there for your team doesn't really exactly help either.
Right. This year they named 5 alternates. I think who we got Ferraro, Goodrow. I forgot the other ones already.
Granlund, Toffoli, and
Oh yeah.
Cunnin.
Oh yes, thank you. I don't know my team.
It's on the same Wikipedia page. That's I scrolled down.
Thank you. Thank
But
you.
you guys are in the New York League of like wild like um just amounts of assistant captains because I feel like it's a running joke that New York has like way too many and they have 4. So yeah, when you
We
need
had 4 the previous 2 years, but they would alternate who was who, and usually it
Mhm.
was only two people on the ice wearing it each game, a home and away.
Yeah,
Um,
that's like usually the situation I think cuz like with San Jose too. because your captain's not on the ice, I think the rule is you have to have 3 A's because the captain's not there. Because I know with the Canucks it's Hughes, then Miller and Pettersson as the 2 A's. And if Miller and Pettersson, one of them is out, or if Quinn's out, then an A gets tacked on, like Tyler Myers or Brock Besser, etc. Stuff like that. Um, don't laugh.
Myers.
Myers, yeah. Yeah, he's apparently a decent leader. I don't know. Um, he also, like, I think Danton Heinen wore an A in the preseason. Like, they just kind of give it to people sometimes. Not a knock on Danton Heinen. At the same time, he had not played an actual real game for the Canucks, I think. But I don't know. He's also from here, so um, yeah.
I think for the Sharks, I would have the only player that makes sense to get the C now if they take it away from Couture would be maybe Ferraro because he has, he's on the younger side. He kind of is the bridge between the veterans and the youngsters on the team. But I don't really see that as a long-term thing. I feel like it would be a placeholder until Celebrini's ready or something, because even now, just the couple months that he's been in San Jose, we've heard reporters talking about how much leadership he has displayed in the locker room already at such a young age. So that seems like they're probably waiting for him to develop a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, like it's not like the same situation of a Foligno, but I'd say, would Ferraro be the first YouTuber captain in the NHL?
Yes. He hasn't posted in so long though. He's
Oh,
like busy with his girlfriend or whatever.
he's busy with his career being an NHL player.
Well, yeah, I mean, but he used to post a little bit more frequently, even like throughout the season, every
Oh,
a video every so often when he first got in.
I
But
I can
that's
barely I can
since stopped.
sorry. I was like I can barely upload once a year and I'm like I'm not playing 82 games on a big sheet of frozen water. So,
Right.
at the same time, I don't know. Maybe he has more free time.
Yes.
I get long plane rides, I guess, from coast to coast. Such is the case with West Coast teams. All right, I think that's it for um sorry. I think that's it for tonight's show. Is there anything last where can the Game Over folks find y'all?
Everywhere. We're on Twitters. Oh, sorry, it's X now. I keep forgetting. I dub
Oh
name
no,
it.
it's just
um and Instagram at Over the Glass with underscores, I think. I can't remember. Jay, you're better at this
Over
than me.
underscore the glass.
Thank you. We're on
We
YouTube. Oh, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. You can
Oh, I
keep
was gonna
going.
say we're on YouTube, we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the podcast things. We're everywhere. You can find us pretty easily. Just Google us.
yes,
We
definitely.
post weekly, and we started this season joining the Hockey Podcast Network. So we're starting a new chapter for our podcast, and it's a exciting milestone for us.
Yeah, because we started from the ground up. This is fun. This is great. This is great for us.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on your new season as well.
Thank
And yeah, I definitely recommend checking out Over the Glass. Very fun. Just y'all are such a good time. And thank you for joining me tonight on Game Over Vancouver. Once again, the Canucks beat the San Jose Sharks very narrowly in a 3-2 victory in San Jose. I've been Kaja Antic. Remember to subscribe to Game Over Vancouver wherever you find it on YouTube, on your favorite podcast platform. Like the videos, favorite the streams, do all that fun stuff. And yeah, we'll see you guys. Well, Game Over Vancouver. We'll see you guys again on Tuesday. It's like, when do we play next Tuesday? Tuesday. Special teams, special players. I don't know. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.